The night was quiet, outside of the chirps of the crickets and the distant hoot of the owls hiding off in the trees. I was there on the back deck, sitting by myself, just me and my thoughts, staring off into the darkness of the trees that were all around me, swishing the brandy that I had in the glass that I was holding on to like it was the last dollar that I would ever see. I really didn't have any certain ideas that I was thinking about nor clinging on to. It seemed to just be a mash of all different kinds of things. I was not sulking about anything nor anyone, just finding myself again, centering myself from the chaos of the day and the inevitable chaos that tomorrow would bring with it. I was sipping the brandy and just really reorganizing my thoughts into that one steady thing that bring me back to balance. At least that was what I had convinced myself, that it was what I was doing. I was lost deep in my thoughts when something had caught my attention out of the corner of my eye. I was not taken by surprise. It was more like a small movement that could have easily been noticed. But for some reason it did catch my attention, so I pivoted my attention from the darkness of the trees out in front of me and looked to the side. What I saw was something that did not really belong in the darkness of the trees that I had grown so used to. In the darkness of the trees in the area, I saw a small pinprick of light. Now my full attention was upon the light in the darkness. I stood up from my chair and walked over to the banister of the deck and was staring at the light. I then realized the light was not actually getting bigger, it was really just getting closer. I watched the light with my full attention as it maneuvered its way through the trees heading right in my direction. I did not speak a word, nor did I feel afraid. I just stood there, now no longer swishing the drink in my glass, and watched as it drew closer and closer to the edge of the darkness. The light made its way through the trees until it reached the edge of the tree line. I stared in what could only be described as a guy who was in a trance, although I was not in a trance, but just really mentally trying to make sense of something that could make no sense at all. I then let out a breath that I had not realized that I had been holding. As I stood there and looked at the light, it seemed to collapse upon itself and morph into a form. I could not tell exactly what the form the shape was in as it was partially behind a tree. I lifted my glass to take another sip, and as I did, a form stepped out from behind the tree. There before me, not maybe 20 feet away from my deck. What was this? I can't really make out what my eyes were seeing. It was not a person, and yet it was in a human shape. The best way I could say is that it looked the thing that everyone knew of as an alien. Not the little green men type of alien, but it was in the general idea shape-wise that one would say was the typical green men. Except this one was around 7 feet tall and had a silvery, swirling pearl-like skin. It seemed to have its own light blue hue that seemed to be coming from inside its own body. Yeah, it had a large head, teardrop shape, with the chin being the thin point. Its eyes were the large teardrop shape with eyes that seemed to have their own light source. It stood there at the edge of the woods looking right at me with those big eyes. There was no facial expression that I could make out, just what seemed to look like a straight face, as though it was watching me to see what my reaction would be to its presence. I suppose I disappointed it, as in the lack of expression or lack of shock that I could only assume it was expecting. No, I stood there just looking at it, taking it in and trying to tell myself that yes, this thing is real and that I am not seeing things. I know that I have not had that much to drink. I mean, this was my first glass of brandy, and I was not in any way affected by the alcohol in my system. We both just stood there for the first few minutes. Then I sat down my glass on the banister and walked over to the stairs that lead from the deck into the backyard. I hesitated and the top step. Then I began to walk down the 4 steps that lead to the grass. As I walked down the stairs, the being stepped forward and towards me. As we both crossed the yard and met in the middle, we both then stopped and stood before one another. I did not feel that there was any danger, and I projected that same feeling the best I could guess, as the alien did seem to react as if it was afraid of me, or that I might have bad or hurtful feeling towards it, and it obviously did not feel that I was going to try and harm it in any way. We stood there, looking at one another. As I looked into its eyes, I could see that its eyes were not just a plain black nor brown, nor any other color as we are used to seeing people with different color of eyes. No, this being had eyes that were not just one color. Its eyes were multiple colors on multiple levels. I looked deep into its eyes, and I could only describe them as if you look into the night sky and see the different constellations in the sky. As the constellations move and swirl in the sky, that is what the eyes of this being looked like, constantly changing, and something that I have never seen in my life. They were the most beautiful eyes that I have ever seen. That is the only was that I know how to explain it. What do you say at a time like this? Do you just say hi and stick out your hand to shake? What if this thing has no idea what my raised hand means? What if its way of greeting was something completely different and I am really the ignorant one? So I stood there for a moment, just looking. I could now feel my heart beating against my rib cage. I was wondering if this thing could actually even hear my heart beat. Then I thought, is this thing even here to meet and greet? Or is this thing here to meet and eat? Did I make a very bad decision to even step off my deck, or should I have just ran inside and grabbed my gun and get into the mindset to defend myself? All I could say for certain is that many different thoughts were racing through my brain. But as I tossed all these things around in my mind, I could see the being open its mouth. Well, the best thing I could describe as a mouth. It was really just a small slit below its tiny nose. What came out was not words as we speak them. It was more like music, a musical sound that was beautiful and confusing all at the same time. It was a song is the best way I could put it. I could see that it had understood that I could not understand what it was saying. I was more like the sound of a slight breeze blowing through wind chimes. I tilted my head as I was trying to process the whole thing. I could tell that it was trying to communicate, but I was just not able to understand. It tried to get me to understand for a minute or so, then it stopped speaking and lifted up its big hand, a hand that was twice the size of my hand, and I could see that it had on 4 fingers, a very large and long thumb and 3 fingers. I mean, its fingers had to be 7 inches long. As it lifted its hand, it began to make swirling motions. Maybe it was trying to write out what it was saying, but I still could not understand what it was trying to relate to me. Then, when it could see that I was getting frustrated with myself for being too stupid to understand, it raised 1 finger, as if it was telling me to hold on for just a moment. I held it hand out, palm up, and closed its finger into a ball. There was then a very bright flash that happened inside its palm. When it opened it, fingers, there in its palm laid a small round item. It looked like a bottle cap. He raised his hand and held out the thing as if it was wanting me to pick it up. So what else do you do? I reached out and took the thing. It was very warm, not hot, just warm. It did not burn my skin, but just warm. It then motioned towards the thing and then pointed towards my ear. I really didn't get it, but I put this thing, whatever it was, towards my ear. As this thing got close to my ear, it seemed to have a hum to it that I could hear. Then, as if it was alive, it moved from my fingers and attached itself to my ear, like when someone put a hearing aid to their ear. Yes, it sat in the opening of my ear, as I could feel that it was there, but it did not feel like it was invasive, just sitting there. When I looked back up at the alien, it did not change the look on its face, but when it opened its mouth to speak, I could actually understand what it was saying. You talk about being strange and wonderful all at the same time. It looked at me and spoke. I come here in peace. Yes, I was taken back that this thing was talking to me and I could understand what it was saying. Hello was the only thing that came out of my mouth. I mean, what else would I say? What would you have said? I have come here just to meet you, Jason, was the next sentence that it spoke to. Me? Me, why me? Who am I for anyone to want to meet? That was the first thing that came back out of my mouth. I mean, who was I that something like this would happen to, that anyone would want to meet, let alone some being from some other world or some other dimension, or wherever this thing came from. You are the one whom many have spoken of, and we seek you out to gain an understanding of your race, and to ask some questions about your planet and the culture that you are a part of. It said this, and it was as if it was just so natural for it, like it was making a statement that would not shock a single person. I looked at this thing. I am sure my eyes got bigger, and the look of surprise on my face I would have thought would have made it laugh. If it could laugh, I was not sure if this thing could even laugh. But hey, why not? Is laughter not a universal thing? All right. Me? What do you mean? I am the one many have spoke of. Have you been talking to people about me? I mean, what did I do that anyone would speak about me? I am just me. I don't do anything that has much of an impact on anyone or anything. I am just a guy who is trying to make it by in this crazy world. That is exactly what makes you the right person to speak to. Many speak of you as, many of my kind and others have spoken to you, was the reply from it. I opened my mouth, shut it, then opened it again. Nothing coming out. My mind was a blank for a moment. What does it mean? Its kind and other kinds have spoken to me. What do you mean, your kind and other have spoken to me? I have never spoken to someone who looks like you, let alone any other kind of being from another planet, was the only response that I could come up with at the moment. You have spoken to my kind, and even other kinds of beings. Your mind is more than you understand, and there are many things that you can do with your mind that you don't even realize you're doing. You can change things with thoughts and what you would call human will, either awake or asleep. You can influence things. All right, then why do I not remember this? You have met my kind and beings from other planets and other dimensions. You have done so in what you would call your dreams. Dreams are not constructs that your brains just comes up with. It is not made up of thoughts congealed into storyline. No, your dreams are direct links to other beings, both in your universe and also beings that exist in other dimensions. Okay, you have me perplexed now. What do you mean, my dreams are tapping into other worlds and different dimensions? I once dreamed of a cat that was eating an ice cream cone, and when it saw me looking at it, it told me that I could not have a lick. You mean that was a real cat, and it could really talk to me? Have you ever slapped a wind chime? That was the sound it made when I said that, and I guess that was it laughing. It was different, and very nice sounding all at the same time. I am happy that I was the one chosen to make contact with you. I knew that I would. Like this assignment. No, Jason, what I mean is that when you sleep, or concentrate, and open your mind, your thoughts touch another dimension, and thought becomes reality. You can think of something, and with enough emotion and what you would call willpower, causes what makes up the ether of the universe to align to the match the thoughts that you have. Therefore, what you thought of becomes a reality. Yeah, right. So what you're saying is, if I was to think of something like I want some of the hottest chick to become real, and that they will appear in my house. This was the one thing that I could think of. I know how shallow of me, but I could not believe what I was being told. No. What I am saying is that when thoughts are pure, they instruct, so to speak, and tell the universe what you want, and when all things are in balance, it becomes so. The alien told me this as if I was a kid in grammar school, and he was the teacher. Maybe I was a kid in the slow kids class. I don't know what to think at this point, as this makes no sense to me. What do you mean? The idea that the human mind can make things manifest? I asked him with the most puzzled look I have probably ever painted on my face. You are an intelligent human. However, the people of your race do not understand the potential of the human brain that you have. You and your race of people have such an untapped potential within yourselves, and we, among other races, would like to help you to tap into your abilities. This is what he just spat out there as if it was just a normal conversation. Well, I will say that there are a number of people that I think don't have two brain cells that they can rub together. However, what good would it do us? We are a people that have hard enough time trying not to kill ourselves and destroy the whole planet at the same time. I know some of this is cliché to say, but it was all that I could think of that made sense at the moment it was coming out of my mouth. This alien started to wave his hands around and moving them in a swirling motion. Suddenly, as he did this, it was almost as if he was moving them so fast that I began to see what looked like motion blur, but I know that his hands weren't really moving that fast, just there really was something coming off of his skin and leaving a slight light trail. As he did this, he said, "You think that time is linear, and it is not. It loops back upon itself and simultaneously moves forward and also splits into dimensional levels. I have no idea what you're talking about, but it sounds really cool. But what do you really want from me right now?" I asked him, as his way of speaking was way over my head, and I still could not figure out why he is talking with me. Maybe you should be speaking with some kind of scholar or scientist. You think you are not worthy. However, what you don't understand is that it is not what your education level is. It is more about how connected you are with the universe around you. He told me this still as if I was supposed to know just what he is talking about. I still think that you have the wrong guy. I am just your average man. I Work a regular job. I mean, I am just a carpenter. I had no other reason to think that I was nothing but normal, and I did nothing special. Come with me. I will show you some things that may be able to help you to understand the things that I am speaking of, he said, as he turned and raised a hand and gestured me towards the woods. I was not sure what he meant, but as I looked at his hand in motion, I looked towards the other side of the backyard. As I looked to the other side of my yard, I saw a small pinpoint of light, and as it got bigger, it took the form of a doorway. It was an ice blue color, and it lit up the entire backyard. He then touched my elbow and began to lead me over towards the light. As we walked up to the light, I could something inside the light moving. Yeah, it scared me for a second, but as I looked at the light, yes, it was as if I was standing at a doorway looking into another room, but what I was seeing was not a room, but what appeared to be a completely different world. He then looked at the door, then to me, and said, "This is Varga. It is a desert world. Here in your own solar system, I believe your people call it Venus." I looked at him, giggled a little bit, and said, "You're kidding me. You mean this is another planet? This is really Venus?" I could not believe that this was actually Venus. This was really hard to believe. I was just baffled. All right, so what do I do now? Do I just walk through? Is it going to pull me inside? I mean, how does this thing work? All you have to do is step through the doorway, and it is just as if you're stepping into another room, except you will find yourself on the surface of Varga, he told me as he waved his hand as if he was showing me a fancy prize or object. "Well, I suppose there is no better time than the present," I said as I took a deep breath, not sure why, but it seems like the right thing to do. I then stepped up to the doorway, lifted my right foot, and began to step into the doorway.